Hey, everybody, this is Mike Song. Now that we're on here, I'm looking forward to presenting to you. This is the Intermediate Get Control of Excel class for our friends at ARC. I hope you're all well. I hope you're doing great. I know this has been a tough time for a lot of people, and I am just excited to be with you here today as I've been live. You know, I always love coming out to visit you on the West Coast because I have such great family out there. My mom's out there. And my sister's a screenwriter for Disney, so I get to go watch her cool life. You know, she's the cool one in the family. But at any rate, I wanted to take you through an intermediate class for Excel. Now, to manage expectations. It's very difficult to determine what intermediate means for Excel. Some people are just so advanced with Excel that they are going to see almost any class as being somewhat for beginners because you could probably do a doctoral thesis on Excel. So I'll do my best to keep it sort of in that intermediate level. And then I'll do an advanced class where I'm going to dive into some more advanced things that I think will help you along the way. So let's get started. If you'd like to follow me at Get More Done on Twitter, I'm there. I'm also on LinkedIn. I always like to mention that too. New book out, Hamster Revolution for TQ. Really very excited about it. It's just all about this concept of TQ that we have developed. And the concept of TQ, which I think is a great way to kick off an Excel workshop, is basically saying this. We all have a tech quotient. It's never measured. Nobody knows what it is at this point in time. So we developed a scale by which we could measure TQ. And we also noticed there was no definition for being tech savvy. It's kind of a loose definition, right? It could be that you're good with Excel or that you're good with Outlook, that you're not afraid of technology, that you resist it. So we said, let's call it what it is, the ability to strategically learn about technology. So we all have to have an ongoing focus on new ways to leverage technology, how to leverage it and share that technology with others. That's a big one. Sharing that technology with other people, I think, is probably one of the most understudied things of all. Who spreads this important information around the organization? We think that's a component of TQ. So in other words, if it's all about boosting your tech proficiency using tech best practices, you probably have some score, right? And we developed this scale like a Myers-Briggs type of scale. And then you also have the ability to share these tech insights, which is also a big asset. So that puts you in one of 4 quadrants. And of course, the idea of today is that you begin to boost your tech skill. Maybe you begin sharing them a little bit more, and you move up to this top right quadrant. We call that the Techspert quadrant. We think that's just about the best thing you could do for your career these days because we're so immersed in technology. Well, today, let's have some fun with a scenario, okay? So I'm going to pretend this is a real scenario. It's a silly scenario, but I like sometimes taking people out of their everyday work and thinking about things differently as if we were part of a team. So let's pretend we're from the Drones for Homes team. Our slogan is Capture the Magic. We've gone to work for this company, Drones for Homes. They're just friendly little drones that we make, and people use them for recreational purposes only, and they have a lot of fun with those drones. And so we have been asked to come in and evaluate 4 people on the team. Let's just say they're salespeople. They could be any people. I know there aren't a lot of salespeople in what you folks do, but it's just an analogy everybody could understand. So we work for this company, and for the company, we have 3 different kinds of drones. So we have the Falcon 2000. That's our top line model. We have our CamJam, I think it's 200 or 400, CamJam 400. And then we have our little Wasp 100, and that's sort of our starter line. So very simple product line. We're going to use an Excel spreadsheet, obviously, to kind of analyze the results for this. And let's meet our sales team. We've got Pam, who's great on the phone. We've got Jim, who's a terrific listener. Karen, who knows how to push back when a client just has it wrong, and she actually ends up winning them over to understand the data and why their drones are the best. And then, of course, Carlos, who's always been year in, year out, our superstar. This guy, Carlos, you know, he's just always number one. So today is all about evaluating their talent, their skill. And so we're going to start with some shortcuts that will help us on our way. There is a workbook that I'm going to be sending to Robin and that you can utilize to kind of follow along with this. I'll be using it in this session. And then we'll talk about formatting strategies and really try to get into how we can turn our data and info into knowledge. That's a really big part of my philosophy. It's like you have a spreadsheet that has data in it. How can we make it informative and turn it into information and then knowledge and ultimately give us a real idea of what a wise way of looking at this information set. So we'll talk about formatting strategies, and then we're going to go into our fun formulas and functions. We're going to talk about formulas, how we can, what we can do with them to get more done. And in the advanced section, we'll be going into pivot tables and I think macros and a bunch of other features that are just there that a lot of us don't have a chance to get to and play with, and that's what we'll be doing in part 2 of this section. Okay, just a couple of helpful ideas. You will also have a copy of the spreadsheet. So if you don't have it, you can check in with the folks who sent you this video. You should also have the copy of the spreadsheet. I'm always going to return the spreadsheet back to its original look and feel. So here's the spreadsheet. Now, if I do a bunch of stuff to it, I'm going to go back to this original way that it looks, because as we show and share different features, the problem with just keeping those features in, if we color code everything, it starts to just have every feature incorporated into it, and it starts to look a lot like just like an out of control science experiment. Like it's just too crazy, and there's colors everywhere, and charts are all over the place. So we're gonna Control Z will take us back. So if we do something here, and we have it in there, if we hit Control Z, that just returns us back, and you can return steps by doing Control Z, 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 Z to get back there. And now that I've got the spreadsheet open, we've got this relatively simple spreadsheet here, and we're going to be working off of a larger spreadsheet right here, okay? So this is going to allow us to do our analysis of the spreadsheet. It actually starts over here. We've got our order numbers there, and we've got our, across the top, our headers. So use Control Z to get it back to normal. Use the quick access toolbar to record insights and save, permanently basically save, the very best features that we might delve into. And so this is a really great idea to do. So let's just take a moment to look at what I'm talking about. See how I've got this tool belt here? One of the most important TQ skills is to organize not only your information, your stored documents and files and all of that stuff, your folders, digital folders, but to also organize the tools that you use to do your work, right? So if you're a great productive person, you're going to want to have the most commonly used tools right here on your quick access toolbar. So very first thing that I'd love to see everybody do, and I'm going to put this back to where it normally is. It's usually up here, and I call this the out of sight, out of mind location. You will see yours in the upper left-hand corner of Excel. Now, I will say this is Excel for PC, a version of Excel for PC. So a few things might be different for my friends who use Macs. So I'm apologizing about that. But if you click on this, you will be able to show this below the ribbon. And there you can see that below the ribbon, you've got the ability to add things to this toolbar. And what I discovered that really helped was, let's say, for example, I wanted to add AutoSum, because this AutoSum feature is really great. I can right-click on AutoSum, select Add to Quick Access Toolbar, and now it's there all the time. So that the features that you are seeing today, my assignment for you is to add them to the quick access toolbar if you are on a PC. I think that's a really quick, great, smart, easy thing to do, okay? So that's just using the quick access toolbar to record those insights and then to catch up fast. So you want to review the recording, use the handouts, add a post-session question, anything that you want to email to me as a question, I'm fine to try to answer. But basically, when you walk away from this, watching this recording again is going to be very powerful for you. So definitely keep a link to this recording bookmarked and then go back using the handouts and so on to make sure that you can catch up if you fall behind in some area real fast. I'd love to see this help you all throughout the year. And you can always email me at info@getcontrol.net, info@getcontrol.net if you have a question of any kind, okay? I'm going to jump out of this PowerPoint presentation and jump into our, let me jump into our workbook here. Where's my PDF workbook? Oh, it closed up on me. Let me open it up. Oh, there it is. Let me grab this PDF. So much going on here. Okay, so we're going to start with the workbook and work our way through it. And then I'm going to be adding a few things onto the end of this because I found a few more advanced things to show you in the second webinar. So starting here at the beginning, there's a quick whirlwind tour that I won't take you through it all, all at once because I know you guys are not beginners. But I just want to let you know it's here. Things like inserting columns and rows, I'm assuming you know how to do that, manipulate a column and a row and move it around. I do always kind of like to show people that the moving of a column, it's so powerful, So if you have information on a spreadsheet and you want to move it around, I think it is really powerful just to always remember you hit the Shift key and you mouse over a column till it has that little cross arrow, that black cross, and then you can move that column around. So I just moved May in between February and March. I can move it back by doing the same thing. It's tricky, though, because you have to have your finger pressed on the shift key. I think that's a really great strategy to, when you get a spreadsheet, to immediately ask yourself, how can I format this spreadsheet so that I can, so that I can see the data next to itself that is most relevant, so you can push things together. Alternatively, you might want to kind of go across like this and just right-click and select hide. And that will bring two columns together for comparison. You can always just highlight the two external columns there, right-click and unhide them to get them back. So that's just a little formatting thing that I think is super important. But I'm assuming that the special functions feature where if you highlight any number of places in here, down here at the bottom you get the average, the count, the minimum number that's there, and the sum. So I know that these figures here add up to 154,144. And I think that's I use this a lot when I'm just really trying to quickly get a feel for things or to count things real fast. It works out super, super well. These are just things that are a little past beginner that I want to try to show you and share with you. There's the quick access toolbar. So worksheets, I think it's so important just to remember that you can go multi-sheet. This is something that is really important. So, for example, if I were to, come in here and look at a number right here, and I wanted this particular number here to show up over here, right? I could put the equal sign in, okay, and then toggle over to here, click on this cell, and hit enter, and then that number will pop in over here. So in other words, you can then, if you came up with a certain number on one spreadsheet, and that's the beginning of a calculation that you're going to need to use a second spreadsheet with, and it's getting messy to have it all on one, or I should say worksheet, then you can absolutely do that again. I'm going to do that again. Please do it with me right now. It'd be kind of nice to make sure that you guys are all cool with this. So you see a number over here. You say, I need to bring this number to another spreadsheet. So you go to the destination spreadsheet. You press just a simple equal sign. You click on the next worksheet here. You click on 10,476, hit enter, and now that number will carry over here. And if the number changes on this spreadsheet, it'll change on this spreadsheet. So if you're creating a series of interactive worksheets, I keep saying spreadsheet, but these are called worksheets, the whole thing is a spreadsheet, then you will be able to pull that information over there. So you can work multi-sheet. Of course, I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that you can create multiple worksheets by clicking the plus button. If you can right-click here, you can even color code or name these tabs to differentiate them a little bit more for you. I'm just keeping it simple with my small and my big tab. Those are kind of simple ways that we can kind of work this through. Okay. So now that we've got a little bit of worksheet stuff in here, let's keep rolling forward to our shortcuts. So shortcuts are so important, and I am constantly reviewing this little chart here because there's always one that I'm forgetting to use or I'm just a little bit fuzzy on. So I think it's really terrific if you can go through here and methodically kind of go through and find one or two more shortcuts, right? So for example, Control plus Home, that will take you to square A1. Let's try that one, okay? You're on a big spreadsheet. Let's say you're thousands of things over. I press Control plus Control plus Home button, and that shoots me right up to the top square. See that? So if you can always get back up to your top line by pressing Control plus Home, that's a good one. I like that a lot. I think this is such an important one. Find a specific number, a word, Control Fing. I think whenever I'm looking for something, like if I'm looking for the word Chicago, Control plus F brings up my little thing here, and I just type in Chicago and hit enter, and it takes me right to every instance of Chicago that's in the spreadsheet. Okay, so those are great. Control G works really well. Control G is your go-to a particular cell. So if I wanted to go to cell, O44, but I'm over here, Control G, O44, enter. Whoops, I must O44. Okay, and it takes me right over to O44. I probably hit the 0. And it takes me right there. So give all of these a try. You can pause this video, try these. I think you'll be glad you did. Another one that I like a lot is F4. It repeats a formatting change that you're making. So let's say you've gone through here and you see some red flags and you want to say, I want to mark those red flags. So you come over here and you say, oh, this is a red flag right here, this number. And so you go to your little paint thing and you red flag it with that format thing. Well, next, if I want to do that now, I just put it in another place, I hit F4, another place, F4. So you can see how that's going to save me a lot of time to kind of mark up and make notes on something. Control Z, 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 Z to get us back to where we were before. And let's make sure our small, we're back to where we were before. So these shortcuts are really powerful. And there's one that I always screw up. So I want to do Control Shift plus arrow here. Let's do Control Shift plus arrow. That'll select all the cells in a row or column. So a lot of times you're trying to select all the cells in a column. And so I'll do Control Shift downward arrow, and that will select those for me. Let's try to do it horizontally too. Control Shift. There you go. So you can do it for rows or columns. So again, when you're in a bigger spreadsheet, it makes a little more sense why you'd want to do this. You're way up at the top, and you want to highlight that whole column because maybe you're going to take these numbers and do something with them. Control Shift downward arrow. See that? And so that's a great way to highlight everything in a particular area that you want to make a global change to of some kind. Gosh, I could go on and on with all of these shortcuts. And so here's another one that I like a lot. I'll come back to this, the F4, when adding a number that you want to be an absolute number. We're gonna look at that in a second. And so one other quick shortcut that I just love that I've got to show you that's so important is this F12, okay? So when you do your file and save as, right? Save a copy. It usually takes you to this intermediate screen for those of you that are using this particular version on a PC. And what the problem here, of course, is that this is like a weird intermediate screen. Now, I don't know if you happen to notice this, but there's not a lot of context here about where I'm saving this thing to. I got to really study this breadcrumb trail up here, which isn't very visual. And then over here on the side, it's saying, oh, you want to store that in OneDrive, Mike? Or do you want to store that in OneDrive, Mike? Or do you want to store that in OneDrive, Mike? That's confusing. I just hate trying to figure out which is the right OneDrive there. And then it has this sites, which is really SharePoint. I mean, just say what it is. It's SharePoint, right? So what I like to do here in any Microsoft document is hit F12. Watch what it does. It bypasses all that confusion, and it takes me right to the good old-fashioned File Explorer where I could put this thing anywhere that I want to put it. And I've created a lot of shortcuts over here to just cruise into the place that I want to save something. I can rename this real easily as I'm saving it as well. So those shortcuts are some of the ones that I just really, really love working with. I'm sure you have your own favorite shortcuts, but these are some of the ones that I think are really great. So give these a try, and I think you'll be happy that you did. Okay, let's move in to what I think is the most important thing that we'll talk about, one of the most important things, because it takes data and turns it into knowledge. It turns it into information. So I want you guys to feel super comfortable tuning up those boring two-dimensional spreadsheets that have no color in it. Yes, I know this is about data. This is about factual information. But when you format stuff, it makes it easier for you to process it, to navigate within it. So a little bit of formatting, as I like to say, goes a long way when it comes to Excel. So what I'd like you to do here, and I'm just going to go over here and just check into my recording is going well. Great, super. So now what I'd like you to do, okay, what I'd like you to do, sorry, I'm just checking. Hold on one second. Okay, good, I'm recording. This was making sure I was recording. Okay, we're going to look at tables. Really simple. Our first table is to pop our mouse into a table, click Insert Table. I'll do this one quick because I know a lot of you guys are familiar with this, but pop it in there, over to Insert, click on Table, and now it will allow us to create a nice table. A great little tip I think that's really important is you never, ever want to see two dark colors with the font and the background color together. So here I would immediately go in and highlight that row, click on Home, select a color that will stand out, and there it goes. But if I didn't want to do that, I could also go into Table Design, and I could click through a whole bunch of different options for what that table might look like and find the one that works the best for you. This, I will give you an F minus. I never want to see a table that looks like that or even like that. Those colors are too dark. That contrast is not good for our brains to process, right? So we want stuff that's easy to see and differentiate. And I do think the two-tone color thing can be pretty cool. So I will go with, let me just go with one that makes sense here. I'll go with this one. So there you could see we've got the color, and we're instantly set up with a filter. When we do that, we'll come back to filters in a moment. And I'm going to actually get rid of this Control-Zing myself out of here. There you go. So we get back to our boring setup right there. But create tables to create some structure around your data, your information. I talked to you about moving or hiding columns already, so I won't go through that again. But let's talk about one of the most powerful lists. Here's one that you really can use that quick access toolbar to validate it. It is the drop-down list. The drop-down list is something that we should all be using whenever possible. And in fact, I'll show you how I use that. I have this little, I've got this little goal tracker that I created, and I've been giving this out in, for classes all over the place. And in this little goal tracker, what I did was I created these little toggle bars so that when people are tracking their goals, their big goals for the year, you could see you could set them from hot, warm, and cold, if that project is hot, warm, or cold. And then over here on this side, medium, low, high, done. I can't tell you how much more functional these little drop downs make this for me. And of course, if you're taking this information and crunching it in some way, it'll give you consistent answers, right? So they can't say, I'm from Connecticut and spell the whole thing out, or spell it CT, or spell it lowercase ct. It's going to be CT for Connecticut, CA for California, and so on. So let's create ourselves a drop down for this data here. Let's go with our simple small here. Okay, so we're going to put our mouse, we're going to go over here, right? Let's say these reps are, we got 3 levels of reps, right? We've got level of rep. We've got 1, 2, or 3, okay? So we're going to put our mouse where we want our first, drop-down menu to be. And then we are going to click on data, okay? And then data validation. And then data validation again. And this is really strange. I'm sure there's a better way to do this. I just haven't been able to find it. Then you click on this allow and select list. And then you just basically, you can just set your levels in there. So I'll do level 1, level 2, level 3, and I'll click, and I'll do none, okay? So maybe there's a none option for some of these folks. Click OK. And now I basically have created my drop downs, so I get nice, neat information. Again, just in case you missed it, you want to go to data, data validation again, and change allow to list. And boy, that's a long way to go for it. So the most important thing you can do now here is to right click on data validation here. I'm going to take it off of here because I have this one as a shortcut, and add it to your quick access toolbar, okay? So just to kind of, redo this one more time, do this one more time here, I can now click here, one click button, select list, type in 1, 2, 3, or none, and click OK. And now I've just created, that drop down here real fast. Now, if I'm taking that drop down and it's here, right? I just copied it over to here. Of course, we always want to pull it down and fill it down here, which can be always a little tricky to grab your little filler. And now you can have this, you can have this everywhere you want real fast, right? So your fill down, very important, but a very basic thing, so I didn't really cover it in this particular video for intermediates. So your drop-down list is there. I'd like you to think of some drop-down lists that you might need to create. This could be for the town, the city, the university that someone's with. Think of a few areas where a drop-down list would help you get a better sense of what the information is. Okay, now, next what we have here is we've got the, what we want to do here in our next thing that we're going to cover is the freeze panes view. And boy, does this bug me when people don't use the freeze panes view, because your information just flies up to the top, and if you push too far to the side, the information goes, you lose track of what field you're in. Like, I don't even know what order number this is. Of course, a great clue is to always click into a column so you can see across it. Another way to do this is to put some formatting around the column so it's easier to read across. But the easiest thing we can do is to create our Sheila freeze frame, okay? Sheila freeze frame. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean is you always want to freeze not just the top row, but the side row. And you do that by just going to the first column, that's the column 1 for information and column 1 for the row. So your column and your rows juncture here, and you then go to View, Freeze Panes, and Freeze Panes. See that? So now when I scroll up, oh, it's so beautiful, right? You can see that that's the client, that's the region, no questions at all. And if you go this way, you could see that, the Mr. Duck and Mr. Lamb are basically here in terms of those order numbers there, okay? Actually, we should make this one 2403. I don't know how that got to be 2403. Go. All right, super. So that's freeze panes. Now, what if you want to unfreeze those panes for some reason? You just go back to, let's go back here for View, Freeze Panes, and Unfreeze Panes, and you're back. Okay? So I hate to bring us back to not having a frame there, but that's okay. Now, another thing that I think is so important just to relax about is your column sortation. It works so well, but it is really a great idea when you're kind of sorting columns. Anytime you do it, just to give yourself a sense of, that you're doing a good job of sorting these columns. So if I were to sort these columns by, these are sorted by order right now, but if I were to sort these by, let's say, product here, all I have to do is go up to this sort button here, and I can click on the sort button and decide if I want to go from low to high or high to low, from A to Z or Z to A, right? So I'm going to go from A to Z, which should put the Cam Jam at the top. So let's do that. And now you can see all our Cam Jam 400. See how that nicely segmented everything? So you can see that 1540 is the number next to, or 1540 is next to the first instance of the Cam Jam, or 4620 is right near this first instance of the Cam Jam. So if I Control Z that, and I look at the Cam Jam, first instance of it, 4620, what I'm saying is I know that we've correctly sorted these rows back and forth, okay? So sorting can really help you look at things in a vacuum. It's almost like filtering, but it's faster and easier. Just remember the power area up here, your auto sum. I won't go into this because it's pretty basic, but this will auto sum anything in any column super fast. Click into it, click auto sum, hit enter. You've got your sum for that column. That's why I've got auto sum and fill. All of those things are over here. So I love to use them over there. Okay. Oop, let me just reverse this back here. Okay, this is back how it was. And this is back how it was. So hopefully you're following along with this and finding that these are all things that you can do in Excel. And if you're on a Mac and you're having some trouble because there's just these tiny differences sometimes, all of these things are functional things you can do for the most part on a Mac. So I would just keep trying to maybe Google it, but you should be able to find it. Let's talk about the many things that we can do with filters here. So filters, of course, allow us to filter out some information and leave others in there. To activate a filter, you could create a table, or I just like to go up to Data and click on the Filter button. Of course, you can see I have that as a shortcut. It's because of one of the most common things that we do with spreadsheets. And here we go with what can we filter. So if I want to just filter out all the product information except for the Falcon 2000, I can do that. I can click OK. And I can sort of see who's selling the Falcon 2000. I can see who they're selling it to. And I can isolate some information in there real well. I can do a further sort too. I can do a sort on a sort, or a filter on a filter. So if I want to see how, for example, Jim is doing with the Falcon 2000, I could click over here and sort Jim. So now I'll see Jim's sales of, wait a second, Jim's only sold one order of Falcon 2000s. I think we already have our first bit of advice for this sales team, right? Jim, you got to work on your sales technique for Falcon 2000. Something you're doing here is not going out. It's not going very well. So how would he do that? How would Jim go to work with it? Well, again, our filter can tell us this information. So if we go back to select all and look to see who's got more sales here, I see Karen. I see, I think, a lot of Karen here. let me basically go in here and isolate Karen. She's got 4 times as many sales. That's good. I think we should have Karen talk to Jim about the Falcon 2000. What is she doing to get those sales? How is she doing that? I think that's a really excellent thing that she can do. So we'll go back and reset our filters here and click OK. Now let's say we were doing some kind of color coding, like we had these rows here that we were just doing them in some kind of color that we thought was important, right? So if I went up here to this client and I wanted to sort out numbers, that's great, but I can also sort by color. So if I click here, filter by color, and select that color, now I'm just seeing the stuff that I designated with that color. So remember that you don't just filter on the words, you can filter on color, you can filter on other things too, which I haven't done that much, but you could say something equals. Let's try that. I don't do this all the time. I don't do this one every day, but let's say that we're going to filter on any instance of 385, okay, in this particular column. So we can click on the drop-down menu, and we can select 385 here, but we could also do equals, okay, equals $385. Got to match it exactly, right? Let's see if that will filter for us. Yeah, see, that did. See, so we can filter based on a particular number or a value, as well as checking the box for something. So just like that, we can filter based on a value. And the values are whether it equals or does not equal something. So we could do everything but a particular thing, or it begins with a particular phrase. We can find that there as well. Really, really useful. Okay. So I just love using these filters. I use them all the time. I think they're so powerful, and I'm just going to try to turn all my filters off right now. And just sweeping across, when you're basically looking for this little symbol on here that indicates it's got like a little, hey, this filter is on. Looks like we're back to where we were. Okay, good. Now let's talk a little conditional formatting. We're trying to spot some trends in the sales force. We're starting to get some ideas, like we need to work with Jim on his Falcon 2000 sales. Come on, Jim. And we could come up with 5 or 6 more insights just from crunching the numbers in the way we are. But I just want to share with you that this is their first half of the year data. And when I highlight this data right here, highlight it right here, whoops, highlight it right here, just the data, not the headers, and click on conditional formatting. And I can choose from so many different things. So what I can see based on color scales, what is what? The most common is that the red numbers are the low, and the yellow numbers are in the middle, and the green numbers are the highest. But let's take a look. Can you spot any trends here? Take a good look. I'll give you a second to spot a trend. And there it is, right? Carlos, wait a second. Our superstar. Remember I told you he's number 1? What's going on with Carlos this year? He's going from green to red. And so our brain kind of processes that differently than just seeing the numbers, right? This really shows us who's strong and who's weak. Now, conversely, I'm looking at Pam, and I think Pam started terribly in January. What happened to Pam? Don't you think Pam's story of what she did might benefit Jim, Karen, and Carlos, particularly Carlos? Maybe they're doing sort of the opposite thing. Maybe they're both working hard, but one of them is working smarter and moving in the right direction. Could just be a fluke, but I think we're seeing from conditional formatting that these numbers work really well. There's lots of different conditional formats that we can apply ourselves to. There's data bars and all kinds of cool stuff. So there's one that shows you a little bit more visually what's what. I think you probably know this already, but if you ever wanted to evenly size a column or a row, all you have to do is highlight everything and then just move that row to the column width that you want it to be. And it sizes everything in its path, just like that. See that? I'm going to take this off of here. There we go. So conditional formatting allows you to spot trends. They even have icon sets in here, which are kind of fun. Okay, I think we're about halfway through here in our recording. So I'm going to jump over here to conditional. Here we go. So let's just show our graphs and charts here, what we can do with them. The significance of graphs and charts obviously are not lost on you. Lines, pie charts, all this great stuff is so important to spot things. And let's just take a look here. We'll use our simple data here. With a chart, you're going to grab everything, the headers and the data and all that good stuff, just highlighting it there and then clicking Insert and picking out your chart. There's a lot of great charts in here. I've done the best with hitting the recommended charts button. And you can see here, I'd love for you to click the second one here. There's quite a lot of variety here. I mean, look at this. All these different things that we can see. But the one that seems to appeal to me the most is the simple one here, the charts and graphs. So I click OK. And now we've got a nice chart here, right? And we could see that Carlos trend. We could see that Carlos trend there. And that might be a concern to anyone. In fact, we might want to take that Carlos trend, you know, and decide maybe we want to try to change the look of it. We can do quite a bit with it. We can change colors and things like that. Maybe you want to make that a different color. But at any rate, we see Carlos going down here. Now, the great thing about the charts is that if we just missed a zero on this last, wouldn't that be funny if Carlos actually was sold 340,000? Now, you just saw that thing pop up. So this is all very interactive. It will change as things change. So the charts, one of the things I see people a little hesitant about is to take that chart, highlight it, you know, right click and copy it. Or I'm sorry, I hit Control C and copy, Control C to copy it, and just slap that thing into, you know, a PowerPoint slide, right? Instantly, and stretch it on out. There we go. Let's make it real easy to see. And all of a sudden, we've got a means by which we can show this presentation in a PowerPoint slide. Now, here's a really important insight. You can animate Excel slides that are pasted into PowerPoint presentations to boost their impact. And you can do that with a little feature called fly-in, okay? So, but it's fly-in for charts. So if I click on animations from this PowerPoint slide, right, and I select fly-in, and those are coming in from the left, I want them coming up from the bottom. So I'm going to click on my effects options and have them come up from the bottom, okay? But that still isn't really what I want. You know, I don't want the whole thing flying in. I want to bring these in layer by layer so that people start to see the trends and I can comment on each person's sales and help each person individually. So in order to do that, I'm going to go over to the animation pane here, and I'm going to click here to kind of see if the whole chart's coming in all at once, right? Now, that's not what I want. So I'm going to highlight this chart again, okay? And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click on Effect Options from the bottom by series. And now notice things are coming in one at a time, but they're coming in all at once. So I have one more little thing to do here. I want to click on my drop down and I'm going to go to the background. The very background, I want that to be there all the time. So I'm highlighting the background of this slide and I'm going to hit delete. And now I just have the charts coming in. I want to make sure that these charts are coming in here. I'm going to highlight these charts, highlight the charts, and make sure they're coming in on click by selecting on click one more time. And now let's see what we got. All right, everybody, here are the trends. First, let me show you Pam. Look at Pam. She went from worst to first. She's awesome. Now, let's take a look at Jim. Jim's a little bit flat. And I might play with these colors too because these Jim and Carlos are the same color. And now, look at Karen. She started off gaining. She kind of plateaued and heading down. And Carlos, whoa, wait a second, Carlos, what's going on there? And of course, you can customize the name titles and things like that. What an impact that would have on Carlos if he saw everyone else's numbers side by side, start thinking, you know, I better try to figure out where I lost the mojo, the magic, because I've been number one for 3 years. So that's just a great way to represent these charts. Of course, you could paste this into a Word document. You could paste it into almost anywhere at all. Sadly, I'm just going to delete it. So charts are really easy to create. You can have a lot of fun with them, and I strongly recommend it. You know, you can edit the chart too here. So if I were to just do the chart again here, and I'm not that great at chart editing, so bear with me. I'm going to just pop in this chart. I'm going to do the same chart again, and I want to edit this chart a bit. So the reason why these colors, so some things that you can do is when you click over here to the side, the plus button here will allow you to add like data labels. And sometimes data labels are great. In this case, they're terrible because it's too busy, right? So that's why they're not selected there. You can put a data table underneath that so you can see the actual numbers that way. That might be helpful in some situations. And you can take the legend out. So you can take certain things in. So I see how I've got the legend there. I can take that in or out. I can get rid of the grid lines. Maybe I just want to see this chart, against no grid lines. Sometimes that's possible. Trend lines, add a trend line based on series. I don't know what this even means. But, see, there's a trend line that's kind of saying, I do know what this means. So the trend line takes the curve and it shows you basically more of a flat idea of where they went, because individual months can vary quite a bit. If you want to see the real trajectory over time, add that trend line in there. Okay, and you could change colors and things like that pretty easily. I don't tend to change the colors a whole lot. So, but at any rate, this kind of gives you an idea. Look at this. You can sort of chart through here and see various stages of it. At any rate, the stuff that I love to do. Okay, so now that we have talked about our charts, I think that's pretty good. Sparkline charts, one other thing that's really kind of cool to show. Let me see if I can do the sparkline chart here. So if I'm oops, let me delete this stuff because this should all be out of here. Okay, so if I put a sparkline chart in here, let's see, my sparkline charts are insert. I always, the sparkline chart is always something I just kind of forget where it is. Okay, hold on, bear with me. Slicer. Oh, sparklines, here they are right here. Okay, so if I click here for sparkline chart, it's going to say what data range am I looking for. So I got to select this data range here and click OK. And now I've got a sparkline chart. See, that's showing the trend there. And sparkline charts, I'm always looking right at it and I forget. Now you can see the chart trend that way. So that's kind of a cool way that you can say, hey, folks, here's your trend. This is your trend. And all of a sudden, everybody's kind of going, oh, well, my trend is good, my trend's bad, my trend's average. And that comparison ability is terrific. So just remember, it's insert and sparklines. See, I always look up here and I miss the sparkline thing here. Just out of curiosity, I'm just going to look at columns. Same data range here. Okay. See how what columns? Let's see what columns look like if we fill them down. Look at that. Pretty telling, huh? Kind of cool. All right, let's erase all this here. Let's get out of here. Delete ourselves out of there. Clean it all up. Oh boy, time's going by fast here. Okay, so now I just want to move into a quick discussion of formulas, and then in our part 2, we'll really get into the functions a little bit more. But in formulas, I think it's so important just to remember that the symbology, if you're intermediate, you know that subtract is minus and multiply is asterisk and so on. But something that's a little more intermediate is the order of operations, that there's an order for a calculation. And I think just a great rule of thumb is just to remember anything in parentheses gets calculated first, followed by exponential calculations, which are kind of rare for me. If you're doing a lot of them, they'll be next. And then the next thing that gets processed is multiplication and division, and then addition and subtraction. So if you had 5 times 9 minus 6, Excel would first multiply 5 times 9 and then subtract the 6. Instead of doing 9 minus 6 and multiplying by 5. Just to graphically show you that. So if you had 5 times 9 minus 6, right? In an equation, it would first do the 5 times 9 and then subtract 6 from it in the calculation in the formula that you set up. And of course, you set up a formula by hitting the equal sign, then 5 times 9 minus 6, hits enter, 39. So it multiplied 5 times 9, then subtracted 6. If it did it in a different order, there'd be a different number that would pop out of the other side of that. So everybody uses the same acronym, PEMDAS, parentheses, exponential, multiplication, division, addition and subtraction next. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. You may have heard that as well. Cell references here. So with cell references, it's just so important to know the difference between that there are relative references to each cell. And so this is basically just talking about, I want to just talk about relative and absolute references, just make sure we're all on board with that, okay? So for relative references, if I create an equation here equals, if I just sum this whole row here, right? I just pop this in here, click my auto sum, hit enter. Now I've got the sum there. Now if I copy this over to here, now it's going to sum this row because as you copy things over, they move. So this is B3 through B6, and here we're summing C3 through C6. So you can see that as we move it over, everything changes relative to the column it's in because Excel understands that's a really common thing that we want to do. But what if we wanted to multiply this by our commission rate of, say, 20%, right? Let's say it's 0.2. This is our commish, right? And so here I would put equals, click here, times 0.2, and hit enter, and that's calculating 20% of this number. But if I slide this over, it goes to 0. Why? Because it thinks I should be looking at I12, then J12, then K12. So the big point here is that we need to make this number here. We need to make this number here in the equation, this H2. We need to make that into an absolute number. And the way that I did that was I highlighted H2 and I hit the F4 key, shortcut, F4. And it puts a $H, $2, as you can see up here, in between that. So now this is going to be an absolute number. So as I slide it across, this is going to go from 0, and instead of trying to multiply nothing times this number, it'll be multiplying this number times that. So here I go. I'm going to left click and pull it across, and now I've got my commission rate all the way across the bottom relative to the top there. So this is $412,000. Their commission rate would be roughly $82,000 of that. These guys are getting paid too much. Come on. So just remember, relative versus absolute numbers all begins with your $sign reference there. Okay. So just getting into functions here, and we're going to pick up functions in the second session here, but I wanted to get you through some of the basic functions here that I think are important to know and kind of fun to understand. So functions really are just formalized formulas that we all use, with equal sum being the biggest one, where you're just kind of adding stuff together. But it is important to know that you can add a row by putting a colon in between it. So equal sum N3 colon N52 will sum all the numbers between N3 and N52, which is a nice little shortcut to know. And you can also sum in extra numbers. So you could do N3 colon N52 plus 12 and add 12 to it that way as well. So just always great to remember. This will be G3 through G6 equals sum, parentheses, G3 colon G6, close it up, and you can see that that's going to sum it up. I think you can add like a number here, plus 1,000, boom. Yeah, so that added 1,000 in there. So you could kind of see how this you can add numbers to it. You could even do this plus and just punch in a number here and hit enter, and now it's adding, you know, those numbers together. See that? Notice how when you click from here into here, it sort of highlights the stuff that you incorporated into that formula. But equal sum is your first one. Average is your second one, which is really basically the same thing, except it's going to average equals AVG, parentheses, everything over here, close parentheses, enter. Whoops. I think is average or AVG? I think I always spell the whole thing out. AVG, average. Average, enter. Hold, I'm screwing this up. Hold on a second. Let's try it again. Equals average equals average. And then I'm going to do here through here, here. Close my parentheses and enter. There you go. I don't know what I did wrong, but equals average, G3 through G6. You can highlight it to select it. That's a great function as well for averaging stuff out. Now, concatenate, boy, I just used this concatenate, and I want to show you the example that I used. I was doing a mail merge, and I use concatenate, and I'm really happy about the way it came out. So maybe I'll show you that right now. Maybe I can do that again. I want to try to do it again just so I can remember it, because I had first name here. And what I wanted to do is combine the first name dot last name. And then it was like at, let's just say, getcontrol.net. So what I was trying to do was, since I knew the syntax was first name and last name with a dot in between and then at a particular web address or email suffix, I could then create everyone's email suffix by just combining these in the right way. So here's what I did, okay? So let's say this was Bart here, and this was Simpson here. So I want it to be bart.simpson at gmail.com or whatever it might be. Here's how I did it here. Let me see if I can remember. Equals, concatenate. Okay, concatenate. Then I selected first name, comma, dot. So I had to put the dot in there with parentheses around it so it would know I want you to print whatever's between those two parentheses. Then another comma to separate it. Simpson. And I think I did comma, parentheses, at getcontrol.net. And then I close those darn parentheses, and I can't even imagine I got this right. Enter. I got it wrong. Okay. Equals concatenate I3 G3 dot G3 dot. Oh, I forgot to close the parentheses. See that? Always get it wrong the first time. There it is. Okay. So see what I did there? I was able to get this, and what this allowed me to do, I took like 500 people from an organization that I needed to reach out to, and they were like, yeah, send us an email. And I was like, but I don't have all the email addresses, and they're not all correct. They just said, well, here's the first name and the last name. You figure it out. Manually, it would have taken me hours. I did it in like 2 minutes, but through the miracle of concatenate. Let me give you another concatenate example real quickly here. This is common, right? What if I wanted this to say Sheila Jones together? How would I do that? Well, first I want to blow out a little space here. So I'll highlight the D column and click Insert. Now I've got my space. So let's see if I can do it again here. Equals concatenate. All right, here we go. Sheila, comma, parentheses, space. I'm putting a space in there. Close parentheses, Jones, close parentheses. Yeah, there you go. And then all you got to do is fill it on down. See that? Oh, that's beautiful, right? See, is everyone there? Yeah, everyone's in there. So that's how you can concatenate something, and boy, does that come in handy. And there's a lot of more sophisticated stuff that you can do there, but it's really tricky. All right, so that's our concatenate. We love it. And let's do some count here. We'll do some count. So our count here, there's 4 or 5 variations of count. Maybe we'll just do this and we'll wrap up this session here, this intermediate session, and we'll go on to the more advanced functions in the advanced section, as well as our pivot tables and stuff like that. So let's just talk about the value of counting something here. I'm just going to do it here, and I'm going to just create a separate row here. Okay? Let's call this July. Okay? And I'm going to add some things to this. I'm going to put a blank space in there, and then I'm going to put Excel in here, just a word, and then I'll put another number in here. Okay? So if I wanted to count the number of things in this cell, I could type in equals count, parentheses, and highlight everything in that cell, close parentheses and hit enter, and it would count 5. But notice how there's 1, 2, 3, 4, a blank space, 5, 6 actual entries in there. Why did it just count 5? Because it doesn't count alpha numbers. It counts only numbers. So regular count counts only numbers, but if I just pop a little A in there and hit enter, now it's counting 6. So count A means count everything in there, okay? But what if I wanted to just count the number of blank spaces in there, right? So let's just say I want to count the blank spaces in here. Well, I would just do count blank. Let's count our blanks here. Well, why do you need to count those blank spaces, Mike? Because if you're going to calculate an average, but you're missing 1 or 2 entries, the average will be incomplete because you're not dividing by the right number. If I divide this by, if this is like, this is 8 things, And if I divide the sum of this by 8, it's going to be wrong because there was no entry for 2 or 3 of these. I'll be dividing by the wrong number. So count blank allows me to subtract the blank spaces so that I divide by the correct number. So if I highlight all of this stuff here, okay, if I do equal count blank, oops, not good, equals count blank, I do my parentheses, I do the whole area here, I'll do one more here, close parentheses, enter, and that's counting the number of blanks. 1, 2, 2. So if I were, this would probably be simpler if I just make this all numerical. Let me just do it this way. But let me add just one blank space in there. So there's one blank. So maybe what I do is I auto sum this, right? So I go in here, I sum it, I hit enter. That's the total amount there. Let me just take this down a little bit lower. So I got to include a blank space in there, okay? So there's this, and then there's one other number. So we have one blank space, and I want to get the average. So I got to subtract the blank space out of there. So if I go down here, all right, and I click on auto sum and enter. Oops, let me just sum this up and enter. That's my sum. And now I'm going to count the total spaces here, right? So the total spaces, I'm going to do count equals count. Total spaces there. Oop, the total spaces are there, right? And I'm going to close that up and hit enter. So I've got 5. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what I would divide this by. But it's important for me to count the actual numbers that are there. But if I needed somehow to know the blank spaces in there to subtract them from this number, 6, if I knew this was 6 rows, and I was like, how much do I subtract from it? It would be 1 because there would be a blank space there. So you can count the blank spaces that way. But that's why it's so important to use the count figure, because when you're dividing by the sum, you don't divide by 6 because there was no number here. Okay, hope that wasn't too crazy here. And then you've got your COUNTIF. Let's do COUNTIF, and then we'll wrap up our intermediate session here. So your COUNTIF will tell you how much a certain thing is. So you're counting if the word is Chicago. So this will allow me to count the number of times the word Chicago appears in a particular column. So let's jump in here and count the Chicagos here. Let me first delete all this stuff out of here. Delete and delete. Let's go over to here. So I'm going to count the incidence of the word Chicago in here. Using the count function, I'm going to create a little space for this. And here, I'm going to do my calculation here. So I'm going to say equals COUNTIF. Then I'm going to give the area, E3 through E52, and put Chicago in parentheses. Here I go. Equals COUNTIF, parentheses. I'm going to do F3. So actually, I'm in the F column, right? Oh, no, E3. I want to count the E column. So it's going to be E3 colon E52, right? Comma, parentheses, Chicago, close parentheses, and you can see it occurs 6 times down here. So I know that Chicago is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I missed one, 6. There's another one in there, but Chicago happens 6 times in there. So COUNTIF allows you to count the incidence of something in a long string of information really, really fast. Okay, so that's, I think, good for our first session there. I think it's a good amount of time. Practice all of this stuff. We'll be jumping into a few more formulas in the next section and jumping into pivot tables and having some fun with that, and then going on to do some even more advanced stuff. So thanks for being here. I'm Mike Song. Feel free to email me at any time at info@getcontrol.net, and I hope you enjoyed the session, and I look forward to doing more and more sessions with you folks. I just love working with your organization. So thanks for being here. Bye now.